You.
In progress.
All right, call this meeting of the Historic District Commission's organizational focus committee to order Wednesday, October 19th, at 3:30. This meeting is being audio and video recorded. Anything you say or broadcast will be on the town's YouTube channel. Please act accordingly. Roll call, myself and Bill Oliver, OFC, current work group members, the Resiliently Integrating Sustainable Energy Work Group, Bruce Vandell and Amy Buccino, and hopeful candidate Mary Bergman's with us today. Thanks for coming, Mary. We are going to get a motion to adopt the agenda now.
So moved.
Okay, I'm in favor, there's unanimously. New business, discuss and take action on HDC best practice initiatives. I'd like to just add something and then we'll ratify it after the fact. Is the interest form, I think, was due. The due date of the interest form has passed. We've had two people present interest so far, in addition to Andy and Bruce, and that's Mary Bergman and Lucy Dillon. I received Lucy's today. So we'll review those. And I mean, I think if anyone's listening, Mary, what we just ask is for your own benefit, take a quick look on the, maybe familiar with it, take a quick look at the state ethics webpage and give a call in and make sure if there's anything you need to disclose or anything along those lines that you get the proper form and you do it to the proper parties. Obviously, if it's a disclosure that says you can't be involved, we want to know about it so it doesn't defeat the final product. But you get all that stuff. Okay, so next meeting will ratify discussion of the interest form. Okay, so you all received a copy of the HDC best practices initiative. Bill, before we get into the RISE stuff, I'm terribly concerned, as we've discussed in the past, with the length of the meetings. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with repetitive comments by both applicants, agents, and members. I'm,
Are
certainly
you
not.
talking about HDC?
Yeah, that's first on our agenda, is the best practices. So I just wanted to bring up a topic that is come up. I'm certainly, guilty of that from time to time, but I'm thinking that we should try and bring up some points about being prepared in advance. That's the other big time waster. Knowing not only where the street is, but also, what's proposed.
Oh, this is just for you and me. It's not for this.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I have my PowerPoint still.
Yeah, I know. I'm just thinking we need to, maybe you and I can kind of prioritize a few things and see if we can bring them to the group.
Okay.
The other thing that has come up in discussion outside of HDC, formal discussions or anything like that, is the idea of this isn't changing. We're not experiencing any type of well, the idea is perhaps we do split shifts and we focus. One of my concerns is that we'll get a historic structure and it'll be late in the evening and we're not giving it perhaps as much diligence as we would if we weren't kind of beaten down over the course of the night. It's impractical, I believe, to try and segregate those out and only do them in the beginning of the meeting, or to, for various reasons, just do them at a meeting and not do the other work due to the volume of application. So the idea is that we've got 7 members. We've come up with some way to do a split shift so that, 2 days a week we meet, but not everybody meets 2 days a week. So that, one group would focus on historic structures, be they in downtown or Wisconsin or somewhere else. And then the other group would focus on outside of those areas. So it's not even a glimmer in anyone's eye at this point. It's just something I wanted to bring up for you to please think about.
Yeah, we need an organizational focus meeting too. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah, my beliefs on that, it's a waste of time. We talk about a lot of stuff, we don't get anything done. I think the organizational focus committee gives us an opportunity to focus, make a recommendation, and try and advance actionable goals in a manner that, pre-vets the debate and concerns that members would have, because we know they're, it's like family, we spend more time with them than some of our family. So I think we can do a service to the group and to the community by trying to look at a few of these up front. We have a whole list of these things we want to get to. But it seemed to me that the split, the talking about being prepared in advance, and if you've got something to say, just saying, I agree with so-and-so. Whether that means we take turns on how we start. So, the same person isn't always starting, and you always have to say, I agree with so-and-so. That's, I think, all of it's fair discussion, but I think, we can try and resolve those things and come up with a system, a very simple system that we can recommend to try it as a concept.
Yeah,
It's not so much to rush through and get applications done or to get applications reviewed more quickly. It's to be more vigilant and not miss things, because I think there are things being missed. We know there are. We get calls and complaints and letters all the time. And part of that is, just the pressure of having, 130 items on your agenda for the last 3 years.
mhm.
So I hope that's well received. I just wanted to kind of blast it out there for you to think
Well,
about.
I'm always thinking about it.
Okay, fair enough.
Drives me crazy.
Okay. So, we can skip, we're gonna move on to the RISE work group, and, I apologize, guys, I'm a little scared, I got some family stuff going on. We don't need to ratify the discussion on the interest form. I went ahead and, had an entry in the agenda for it, so we completed to now we're at, discuss and take action on the RISE work group items. Maybe before that, while we're waiting for Esme to so kindly get that paperwork, we could jump to discuss file repository. Just a refresher, Mary, for your information, what we've agreed is that we will, on the town server, post our documents, and they won't be modifiable by individuals in that environment, but they can be downloaded and printed and, used how people see fit, and then, brought in for discussion. At this point, I believe we've agreed to, will be the worksheet, which you receive an email, which we're getting a large format copy of, to work with today. The original article that precipitated the idea of a work group, which interestingly enough does not say some of the things I've been told it says. The statements I made on the floor of town meeting, which were taken directly from my notes, and the motion I made. In addition to that, we'll have the sustainable preservation addendum to building the Nantucket in mind. And I believe that's it for right now. Bruce, please.
There's some difficulty. We're being recorded, and it's supposed to be on YouTube or some way that someone like me who misses a meeting because I'm away on medical can go into and say, okay, well, what happened to the meeting that I missed? You can't find it. And I mentioned this to Esme, and she's going to talk to Florencia about it. But there are no minutes of these meetings, and therefore there's no minutes posted on them. So if you're not physically here taking notes, and you can't find the YouTube on the meeting, there's no record of what happened.
Well, there's not I don't disagree with the concept. It's not easily found. I watched the meeting, I watched the videos by doing a search for HDC Organizational Focus Committee. And, because I'll get a comment from someone and I'll go back and I'll look at what was actually said. And I haven't had an issue finding them. As a work group, my understanding is that minutes are not required. But, you know, we would like to have them. On the other hand, minutes don't really do the discussion. You know, there's not much of a difference between, unless we actually, this is my understanding. And how I think we proceed as a one group, unless we actually vote on something. The general discussion is what's included in the minutes. Our agenda covers the general discussion items, probably as much without getting into a level of detail that isn't practical because of the density of the material we're covering here. That where the video is actually a good alternative. And I'm encouraging people to, you know, watch the videos.
So you found the videos?
Yeah.
I propose our first,
I've got to figure out how to do
our
it.
first edit to this worksheet is to add the YouTube link or the pathway. So that anyone that can open this
Right.
can find the YouTube.
I think that's a great idea, and I think, Bruce, the result of the discussion Esme's having, that we would like to have, the result with Florencia, is that there is a, it's not really a page, but the town categorizes videos by what entity is having the meeting. And then you can have a link to that, which would be static, referenceable in the document, can be emailed to people, and then you just search through the dates that are applicable.
Perfect.
So
That would be helpful for all town
And
agencies.
just to be
Yeah.
stubborn about it, we get these nice agendas, notice of meeting postings. Would it be possible to put the link to the YouTube videos of these meetings, you know, down at the bottom, so that if someone gets it, they can go, oh, I can find this.
Well, no, so this is the difference. Okay, two things. One, I want to back up. These meetings are actually under the organizational focus committee link, I believe. So if we did a search on YouTube, we would find them under Nantucket HDC OSC. But maybe what we'll do, let me look at that, but I get the concept. If you're having difficulty finding, other people are having difficulty finding, let's make it as simple as possible. Maybe we need to throw a keyword search into the tagline for these particular videos. I don't know. I'm happy to investigate it. I made a note. It sounds like Esme has already started that thread. Let's see where that goes. Fair enough?
Yes, thank you.
In the spirit of cooperation and a productive group, I think it's best that we get as much input as we can. So encouraging people to watch these videos is, I think, the point.
Yeah, sure. I don't disagree.
If they haven't been able to sit in on the live meeting.
Oh, thank you so much.
Wow.
I didn't know.
Do we have one in here? I'm happy to stay with it.
Oh, I brought clips. Maybe it was easier.
Yeah. That's a snide. I like this.
They're already totally.
Wow.
One of the great things about online meeting is you can watch it at double speed.
Yeah. So we're actually gonna pull this up on a big screen. If it doesn't go Zoom, I'm not terribly concerned about it at the moment. We've got to set up a Zoom access to the link. Yes, to our meetings, but part of that is going to be to allow control over, you know, getting Zoom bond and all that stuff. Mary, you like that?
No, I got it on
No,
the right
yeah,
here.
mine's, I actually have a word searchable version if you need that. Anyone?
I got one.
I don't, I would like it. Thank you.
Well, you know, you can leave these at the Stop and Shop too.
Okay.
HTC sustainable guidelines.
I didn't know there were copies there.
Like, well, I'm just saying, like the phone book, you know, we can. Did you all drive these?
No. Might be good.
No, I mean, but you have copies?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll keep it out so we can do that. All right, so let me stack and sort. Okay, before we start, I just wanted to bring your attention to, if you would, so kindly go to page. Just have this memorized, I think it's page 13. Yeah, solar technologies of the sustainable guidelines. One of the things that we that is one topic that is mentioned but not elaborated on the notes are this page 13 and 15. So, and what I'm just gonna suggest is that we wanna, at some point, and I think this is one of the low hanging fruits. We wanna update this, take it to the HDC as a recommendation and vote on what's been changed of the recommendations as shown in these 2 pages. So that anything that's inconsistent in the written document has formally been voted and therefore adopted by the HDC. Because I don't know that we've ever actually done that. We may have, but had a couple of concussions since then, so.
The changes, none that have been discussed here, you're suggesting other changes that have been adopted or implemented in contemporary meetings?
Yeah, and I thought it would be a good baseline for us
Okay.
as a work group to know, to have a discussion over what it currently exists as the guidelines.
Okay.
That the HCC is operating under. The takeaway for the organizational focus committee will be, hey, let's ratify all that stuff if anything's different. And it would also serve then as a foundation for that particular topic in our worksheet, which is current guidelines for discussion points that we might want to make recommendations to actually change.
So
Is that-
has the HDC made informal or formal revisions to that they use as guidelines that are not in these quote unquote official guidelines?
Yes, and I'm gonna learn to speak English because that's what I just was talking about.
So how do we find what the HD has changed?
That's also what I was just talking about.
We're about to write it.
We're gonna write it and then we're gonna bring it to the HCC to vote on it.
Does it exist now, though?
It does somewhere, probably something Val and I wrote up and brought forth at some point 4 or 5 years ago. But we wanna, I'll search my hard drive and I'll do some word search and we'll see what was brought to them and, we'll take it from there. There's actually more pages than those 2 though. Am I missing something?
No, there's
Yeah, this one.
15
Yeah, these are just the odd number
and
pages.
16.
Oh, mine goes 13, 15. I just have the odd number.
Yeah, we didn't print the even number pages.
Seriously?
As you don't even worry
So
about
it
it.
might be helpful because there are actually
Right here.
4 pages of solar technology.
Yeah, because I was like, that's very thin. I don't remember it being 2 pages. Okay, that's fine. This was more of a document. Do you have?
I have all pages.
Okay, do you have all pages?
No, I just have what you
Do you have all
only have
pages
these.
in words? Bill?
Yeah, but I have this from July,
Oh, okay.
7/15/22, when Ron Lynch was with us.
Okay, so we'll please email everyone a digital version. And at the next meeting, we'll have some marked out.
Can it exist on the
Oh, it's on
folder?
It's in the folder, yeah.
Okay, it'll be in our.
Yeah, and
It's
it is
also on our
website.
website.
Yeah, it's on the.
It's on-
There's a link in the web.
And what we're trying to do though with the file folder for our work group is have everything in one place.
Right, so we don't have to click through and search other places.
Exactly.
If it's all at hand, it's much easier to actually go back and forth between them.
I'm just wondering if this.
I do apologize, I was having printer technical difficulties, but it also could be user.
Okay,
error.
this has the even pages, so why don't you throw away that one? Check, make sure I'm not lying.
Thank you, Hennigan.
And this one has the even pages, so we just solved that problem, as it just was an oddity with those printers. Okay, we're covering a lot of ground here. Let's please look at the, may I have the stapler? Thank you. The goal today is to try and, Mary, we previously reviewed the list and, it's, they're not necessarily even complete thoughts. Some of them are fairly dense due to the topic information. And the topic, the information is dense. But what I was hoping to do is just kind of go through these and come up with an idea of priorities. And I think what we've decided, that I want to make confirm, is that one of the priorities are items that we can try and resolve upfront in order to formulate a recommendation on that particular item or others of that type to advance to the HDC as a recommendation through its organizational focus committee. So that basically we're getting, we're whetting their appetite for solar. We're getting some small successes and we're getting things done as we go versus waiting till the end of the process. Is there anyone who's adverse to that?
Nobody had a question.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, one second, Mary, feel free. I mean, you're as good as on the work, so, don't hesitate to comment. Go ahead, Bruce.
Thank you. This is a very important subject to certain, or maybe even all communities on the island as we venture into modifying the guidelines. Is there going to be an opportunity for public input into this in some fashion through a meeting or through a forum? Or is this just going to be kind of a caveat? Hey, this is what the 5 people here decided, and we're presenting it to the HDC.
Well, first of all, I don't think that that's a fair construct.
Okay, well,
your
straighten
premise,
me out.
your premise is that there's 5 people in a group who got together of their own accord, and they're gonna come up with guidelines, and somehow people are gonna have to, you're asking if there's a place for people to have productive input.
Yes.
The answer is there is a place for people to have productive input. Where you're off on your construct is this is a work group that our legislative body empowered the HDC to determine who was appropriate and then to go about its work in order to make recommendations to the HDC. So the involvement of the public will be as part of the HDC process. The HDC process is in adopting regulations, guidelines, or regulations, guidelines, recommendations, or regulations to have a public meeting. It's up to the HDC to determine if they want to have a public hearing. So this is, some of the finer points. I just want to be clear up front. I'm not suggesting that there'd be any reason the HDC would not want to have a public hearing. But it is the HDC Act enables the HDC to establish its own guidelines and regulations. So they can do that without having, they have to have a public meeting. They don't necessarily have to have a public hearing. For one member, and I think, I'll speak for Val and maybe even others, is I can't imagine there's a reason we wouldn't want to have a public hearing. So that's the answer to that. And I'm going to refer you back. I'm going to start to get cues on the meeting. I'm going to refer you back to 2 meetings ago, about an hour into the meeting. We had a similar discussion on this topic. I want to thank you for bringing up then because it gave me an opportunity to refine my points.
Aren't these work groups, isn't this, people can come and sit and listen?
And contribute.
Right.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that was a given. I didn't think I had
Yeah.
to mention it, but yes, you're right. I
Right.
thank you for pointing it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
The public can be here. These are publicly noticed meetings. In fact, we may be airing too much to the point of having public speakers involved because they represent no maliciousness intended, but special interest so far. It's been, a solar install.
Will there be separate notices published for RISE meetings, or is it just a public notice for the OFCs? And you gotta look at the agenda to see if there's a RISE.
Yeah,
topic.
because this is a subcommittee of that.
Yeah, this is a work group of the HDC, and it's managed and administered through the organizational focus committee. So when these meeting posts go in, they go in as the organizational focus committee. However, if you do a search on the town website, I believe you will find the RISE work group. The other thing is these meetings, now that we're more regularized, we're off between a 3:30 and a 3:45 p.m. start, but we're doing these on Wednesdays. And of course, we'll be announcing our meeting schedule if it changes. So it's not like this is, happening, I don't want to be lumped in with this kind of notion that things are happening behind closed doors, because it's certainly not the fact. It's not true.
And can I clarify that whether or not these documents will be made public? I mean, I know this in particular is on the public website. But what about this worksheet? Is that going to be made public so that people can acknowledge what these items are? That somewhat speaks to Bruce's point.
I believe they should be. My hope is that we get through these all once where each person involved, which we don't have our full complement now, reviews these comments. As a group, we determine the final text, even if it's draft text. So that then we have a work group product that then can be, posted in a publicly accessible venue online. It will still say preliminary rough draft, but it will be the work of the full group once we have membership.
That's
Great.
Is that fair to you?
I was gonna ask
Yeah, no,
a similar
that's-
question, because when you sent this out as an attachment email, you were very clear about don't discuss this with anyone, don't show it to anyone, don't distribute it. And then in red, you said something about the open meeting law and all this stuff like
Well,
that.
to be fair to myself, Bruce, what I said is, as a courtesy, please don't distribute
Yes.
to this to anyone.
Yes.
Not, I didn't get into, don't show it to anyone, don't.
Well, it's the same thing.
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, there's definitely a different connotation to what you're saying. The other thing is I'm obligated as a chair, and this pertains, primarily, well, to you guys too now, we're in the work group, to remind you when staff or myself send something, to not reply all or to have individual conversations, because it's a violation of the open meeting law.
Yeah, that's a good guy.
Which is why I was in red. So again, there's nothing untoward happening here. Yes. Yes, let's post it as soon as we get a group together. I'm with you.
Great. Which brings an important point. We talked about last meeting, how we were gonna document and actually input people's feedback. And I think we left it a little bit uncertain. How are we gonna make comments on this document? And we talked about doing it live.
Yeah, so would you open the Word document? Newsletter? So I was gonna bring my laptop here. That is an Excel sheet that can actually be typed into as we go. So we can put comments in and we can put in, action items under what's next. We can change the headings, we can do whatever we want.
Yeah, nice. Who's gonna do that?
I sense a secretary position opening up. It can be. I don't know. I mean, I'll entertain doing it during the meeting. It's not like we have a meeting that I can't facilitate and type at the same time. What I'm proposing we'll do is we will keep the review tracking changes on. We will save it with a date indicating revisions. Then we will create a new version that is the updated version. And then as we progress, we will have the iterative archival record of what's been changed over time, should anyone have it. I mean, it sounds kind of crazy to me, frankly, but given the fact that we could be, I can foresee this is a highly scrutinized process. I want to be a little forward looking on it, which also explains some of our introductory comments in this document. I think it's important that we're very clear why we got together, what we're doing, and how we're doing it, and then we stick to it. Can we start though now?
Yes.
I'm not
No,
looking at you because you delayed us. I'm looking for
Because I was
support.
late and because I've asked too many
Yes,
questions.
yes.
Sorry.
Where's
No,
my guy?
I appreciate that workflow and I think that was important to acknowledge. So thank you for walking me through the steps on how
Okay,
this
yeah.
document will be updated. It's true. It's great.
Sure. And if we want, I left off some of the columns we talked about just because there wasn't enough space. Even on 11 by 17, we would have been looking at like a 7-point font. I'm gonna just hit these columns with you. Status, we'll come up with a key at the bottom. Once we figure out how we're gonna process these, what does status actually mean? Code, maybe we do some type of alphanumeric. So number 1A, number 2, 2A, 2B, 2C. So that if we're having a discussion or something along those lines, there's some reference point. Comments, I think, are the child item is it should say parent/child.
Well, there's a column for paradise.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, it's there. It's already, so that's number 1. So the parent is definition glossary. The child item or items and the description for that is to establish with respect to industry terms, HDC terms, etc., or recommendations. That is establish definitions, i.e. a glossary,
What is WRT?
with respect to.
Yeah, thank you for that.
So why don't we start with that one? Is, you know, I'm thinking that that is a kind of a high priority, but not, I don't know, what do you guys think? It seems like we should just identify some terms, put them on a sheet. The other thing we can do is we can make a note here that, so comments would be, I don't know, things we want to change to the child item description or other things we want to do. What's next, I think for this one would be create definitions.
Isn't that what that already says?
Yeah, but we're actually saying what the item is. So create definitions, glossary, and create file link within worksheet. So basically what we would do is what comments might be is that there's a link and it says definitions and glossary, and it's actually a link to the definitions and glossary PDF version and versus the Word version on the hard drive. So that when you, if someone were looking at this, they could just click on the link and open it up. Okay. Who wants to volunteer to come up with definitions, glossary? I don't care if you guys change the term, it's not my,
Now, this is what would be incorporated eventually in here.
and it's also for people who don't like bifacial solar. Is that like a solar panel that's talking out of both sides of its mouth? No. I don't
Gender
think-
neutral.
Is it jet right? So don't start that. Just things, you know, topics that come up, discussion points that come up. Maybe we have somebody in the group who's responsible for the definitions and glossary. And if a word comes up and we say, what? Then they write it down and then they're responsible to send an email and then we update it. I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to give ideas on.
Well,
what
I
I
just
like
find
that.
this process so complicated.
now
I
we need
can't
it.
even wrap my brain
So
around
I
it.
gotta say, we gotta do this, or we're not gonna have, when we
Yeah.
get to the end, we're not gonna have the product to turn into
Let's say-
recommendations.
Let's say Andy volunteers to be the definition glossary focal point.
I volunteer for that position.
Thank you.
That doesn't mean that I can't go through my,
No,
20 years of files in solar and say to Andy, hey, here are some things that we probably want to talk about and include.
I'd appreciate that.
no. No, the idea of all this work we're doing is that at the end, we press the easy button and the recommendations can be put together, because otherwise we're gonna have a bunch of paper. We're gonna have gone through it over the course of several months, and we're not gonna have it in a, you know, necessarily in an organized fashion, because none of us have the time to be keeping that up. So I'm trying to preempt that by structuring it up front.
Now, are we structuring this end product to be a mechanism to enable solar panel installations? Or are we using this exercise to provide a neutral type of a document that says, this is what is happening, this is what we'd like to happen, these are our current preferences?
Define neutral.
And the neutral would be, solar panels are an important component of sustainable energy. And they have pros and cons. Or are we just gonna present pros?
No, I'm gonna direct you to the first paragraph of the worksheet. That will answer your question. In short, we are a work group, an HDC work group. Our charter is to determine ways to resiliently integrate sustainable energy in a manner that's consistent with the HDC mission. That's what was voted on by the HDC in establishing it.
And you've got a little.
That's what was referenced on the floor of town meeting.
You have a footnote number 1.
Well, it's just right up at the top because the footnote is, it's a text note, but the HDC mission is to enlarge the preservation and protection of historic buildings, places, and districts of historic interest, including development of appropriate settings for these buildings and places, and through the protection of the island's historic and natural character to promote and preserve Nantucket's economy. That's taken from the act.
Oh, so that's what the 1 refers to right here.
Yeah.
I see. I was looking at the footnotes. Okay.
I might as well just cover. The HDC work group is to assess and recommend guidelines that promote integration of sustainable energy in a manner that furthers the HDC mission. and more specifically to promote responsible, sustainable energy installations that do not negatively affect the island's character and setting as an historic, unspoiled, natural setting, an historic maritime environment, and an historic architectural jewel. Which setting, environment, and jewel-like nature are the basis of the island's robust economy. If anything, someone might think that this is not anti-solar, but more preservation than solar. It's my belief that these two can coexist. It's a shared responsibility. It's not a, we want it on the front of a house. And, you know, if we don't get it, you know, as an applicant, we're gonna appeal to the select board. That's not a shared responsibility when you have a big backyard and plenty of room for a ground array. Or you have a big enough backyard that, you know, you might lose a little bit of your yard space, but you're in a historically sensitive area and it's, there's a quick pro flow. Okay.
So based on that terminology, based on that definition, our glossary will be neutral in that we'll simply define solar components.
Well, I don't think the question was whether the glossary is neutral, but yes, to your comment, yeah, this is totally glossary and definitions are the words mean what the words mean.
Right.
Yeah, totally. I'm good on that. Mary, do you have any thoughts on any of this stuff?
Just looking at the glossary as it exists currently, there's very few definitions that relate to solar.
Okay.
No, the only thought, I don't know that it's. I don't know where it would fit in, but one thing that I see. Is that when someone's putting forward the design of a house, you shouldn't say. Do you really need 3 bedrooms? Do you really need 2 bathrooms? I feel like this question, the program relating to solar is question. How many panels do you really need to achieve this goal? And I wonder, how do you do that in a way that is not?
We've talked about
questioning,
that.
you know, how much do you really need?
So I'll refer you to number 7, sizing
Okay.
and return.
Okay,
And actually number 6, which is the minimum kilowatt required for a typical Nantucket build out. And then that's kind of expanded upon the rationale and how that would be applied. I know this is brand new to you, you haven't even had a chance to read it,
yeah,
but yeah, we're looking at, that's a great question. What we're looking at is, you know, not unlike the FEMA regulations, you know, what is the baseline? And
that's a good
then,
word to use, yeah.
and then we can determine from there what we really need to be looking at. First of all, we can, you know, determine, and the HDC can determine in its architectural review process whether something needs to be mitigated. But by knowing what the minimum required is, the HDC has a relatively objective idea of how much of it needs to be mitigated. So
There's software that's available to help calculate that. Solar panel layout software.
yeah. And that's also in here. And we happen to have a HERS rater. So we've talked about that concept too, Mary, where, you know, as a HERS rater, the HERS rater can actually input it and they can make an on the fly determination of what the difference will be by adding or subtracting even one panel. So there's a lot of, and we also talked about, well, maybe part of the HDC application for solar is the HERS for new homes, because you're already doing HERS rating,
Right,
is actually, you know, the objective third party's printout. And so, yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. But Mary made me think of something unrelated back on the definitions and glossary. I think it's not just solar, but it's things that relate to the HDC and relate to things like what are setbacks? What is your zone? What are the zones? Where do I find out what my setback is? So our glossary itself in the final version could have links to the town's intensity regulations and setback regulations, so you understand some of these things as an applicant. Because the idea is that we're trying to help applicants put in solar applications, but do it in a responsible way. Part of that responsible way is sensitive to the overall mission to HDC. Part of that is sensitive to the fact that staff are busy trying to process HDC applications. And part of it is that the HDC is busy processing applications. So the more information you provide, the better informed you are as an applicant, the greater is your your, how do I want to say, investment in shared responsibility.
I think zoning has nothing to do with it.
Well, they don't, how many people who come to you know what a setback is? Or what their
You know,
setback
to your,
is?
both of your points. This is not easy to figure out, but if you'll go to the very back,
So they have to
Of
be
the
inside
latest-
setback,
Yeah, they're a structure.
but pools don't.
Pools do, are a structure. Sorry, pools.
it's okay. If you go to the back pages of the latest annual town meeting warrant, there's several pages in there that don't relate to the warrant, but they're produced by the planning department.
Mhm.
And they have charts and graphics describing every zone. Nice chart, setbacks, things of that nature. That might save you the time of trying to look these up, and there are definitions in there. And it's very handy guide. And as for, I have a comment about, several times, we've heard the comment about striving for a balance between what the HDC's mission is and what the overall mission of the community is regarding, for example, solar panels. And I have a problem with the word striving for a balance.
Okay.
Wait, you gotta let me finish.
Bruce,
I know you have a thought, but
it's not a
I'm
thought,
just gonna
I have a
finish my
responsibility to facilitate, and we're getting way off topic.
no, you mentioned the word balance a couple of times here.
Bruce, but I mentioned it in the context of discussion, furthering discussion, so we can move through these points, because we can discuss these.
You know what, I'll just be
Wow.
quiet for the rest of the meeting, thank you.
God, and you know what, you did this at the HDC too, where you didn't get a chance to talk about what you wanted to talk about, and you got a little bit unnecessarily. My role, and I wish you would acknowledge it, is to facilitate the meeting. If I bring something up or someone else brings something up with respect to context on the point they're making, it's different than introducing a new topic. You are introducing a new topic.
I didn't bring it up.
Okay. This is not gonna work if we go through this every meeting. I'll tell you that right now. I am not gonna invest my time sitting here to debate with you over points that you want to bring up about balance. There's no one in this room necessarily who thinks that, first of all, you brought up so many different pieces of an onion that I can't even peel it. The overall mission of the community. How do you even define that? How do you even say the overall mission of the community? It's never been established. So as opposed to giving in,
say that.
Bruce,
You're putting words in my
I'm
mouth.
not, you just said, rewind the tape, you said versus the mission of you said the overall mission of the community with respect to balance. To that effect, my point is simply this, you know, you're dropping these kind of discussion bombs that need to be unpacked. Let's put them on the agenda to discuss. But right now, we're trying to prioritize our list.
Proceed.
Thank you. Balance. No balance is not in any of this document. Are there other thoughts on the definition of the glossary?
Can I ask, where were you looking at that glossary?
Oh, in the sustainability guidelines, page 21.
Oh, thank you.
21.
On this hard copy that I have?
Yeah, it's
Great.
interesting that there's no definitions of the things that are most people don't know.
Okay, well, let's start there.
Yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Sure.
So we have under comments, I think so far, the sustainability version, the annual town meeting planning board insert version. These are resources for information. Are there any others you guys can think of? You know, obviously solar industry stuff, but.
Yeah, no, it's all my head.
Okay. And then we'll put in this Andy's baby. You know, who's primary on it.
So to be clear, we want to build out this glossary that exists in this document to include these solar components, or do we need to have a separate glossary specific to this work group,
Separate, and it'll be
to this
linkable.
module?
It'll be linked, this mod, I think, well, For now, we'll do it on a module basis,
All right,
and then we'll link it within the worksheet, so you can click on it and bring it up.
Okay.
And then later we'll decide how to break it down. Like when we get to micro nuclear,
yes,
you know, that's gonna be a big loss for you.
yeah,
Okay,
Stephen, a quick.
Yeah,
One
please.
clarification. You see this as a living document that's online and not this PDF, yeah, more like a web page.
Yeah.
Great, great.
and I think that where we're going with it is initially, for public access, when we get the group, you know, get it to the point that we have a full group that's been reviewed. It will be in a PDF form.
Yeah.
And then, but we'll be working with a living document, and then the final recommendations will be, maybe there'll be, a printed version with a QRC code or QCR code.
Yeah.
And you can find it online.
sounds good.
Okay. Do you guys want to go, well, you know, as opposed to going through these, I tried to pick up some of these and put the simpler ones that were easy pickings towards the top. So unless someone would like to advance these, I'm more than willing to take comments and move something up, but I'm just gonna kind of go down through the list. So number 2 is parent architectural integration of solar PV and solar thermal tech. The child A is optimizing vent pipe penetrations. Just a quick summary is we talked about plumbing stack pipes. If they're in the middle of a southern roof plane, it kind of creates that visual noise that the HDC is concerned about. Because it draws attention, you know, naturally, you know, through evolution, the pattern breakup draws your eye to it. So it becomes a focal point, which is problematic. It's a relatively easy fix. I believe it's the only requirement is the vent pipe be taller than 2 feet where it penetrates the roof, and I think it's 3 or 5 feet away from a ridge, something like that. Do you guys have thoughts on whether that's something we should try and advance to the HDC now, or thoughts on whether it has merit, anything?
So many of these, probably most of these will have a new construction component and an existing building component. And I think that it's easier to eliminate them, to focus on that word and to be, to eliminate or optimize is better, but ultimately we're talking about eliminating it so that you don't get that broken roof line visually. And I think it's easier to do in new construction. I think that you can always move it to the other side of the ridge, or typically, or to the dormer, or somehow make it not in that plane. In existing buildings, my house, for example, my south face roof has a couple of vent stacks coming out of it, and they're challenging to move with cathedral ceilings inside. Not to say that they shouldn't be moved to accommodate this item. So it's just a different consideration. It's far easier and less costly. But to suggest that it needs to be eliminated is not necessarily the end game. Maybe it doesn't need to be eliminated on my house, for example, so that the panel layouts are more appropriate.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Bruce, thoughts on that?
Yes, I'll wait to see a written document. I mean, I've got experience with moving existing vent pipes. Often involves some expensive work inside.
Right.
And if you mandate it or require it, or set it as a guideline for someone has existing construction, it's a costly experience. And, you know, that needs to be ferreted out before you set it as guidelines.
Sure.
Right.
Everything costs money.
It's easier in new construction because you haven't put the walls. and-
No, I get that, but if you want them and you're getting subsidized to have them, move the pipe.
Right.
Sure, and then what do you do when the subsidy runs out
What's
and you want to reset? But anyway, these are all considerations.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
but we're talking about them now, so
Yeah.
let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So for instance, you bring up the subsidy, and I've been thinking, my note says existing question mark cost subsidy. Again, shared responsibility. The community wants to encourage sustainable energy. It shouldn't all come at the expense of the character and setting of the historic district. I think if you listen to me, you understand what balance is. But if the town has, or through National Grid, it's one of their programs where you get an interest-free loan, perhaps the HDC efforts, working with different facilities of the town, can come up with a solution where you might get an interest-free loan to do that. And it's money out of your pocket, but it's getting paid off by your solar installation. I also want to clarify, the HDC doesn't mandate anything on, an existing home or a new home unless you want a feature and then it falls into their purview. And then it comes down to a set of publicly vetted guidelines. So it's not like the HDC is gonna come in your house and wake you up and say you have to move your vent pipe out of your ceiling and it's gonna cost you this much money. This is all about being forward-looking and trying to plan in advance to encourage the solar in appropriate manners. Bruce, it's a good point about subsidy. I think the idea of, for new construction, clearly that's the low-hanging fruit target. For existing, it seems as if the exploration of a cost subsidy is something worthwhile. Who would like to volunteer to look into that?
Not me, I don't even understand it.
Okay, so we'll save one for you on something else. Bruce?
I'd be happy to give it a stab, but these subsidies change. And it's not just subsidies. It's grants. It's where the town sets up a program. So when we use the term subsidies, it's rather a broad term. I think you're gonna have to define it because in many cases, subsidies would not be available, but perhaps a grant would, perhaps something else would in order to compensate. And these are all, if you were to take away this, what you're calling subsidies and the grants, it's just like with wind turbines, they wouldn't get built.
Right.
If you take them away from solar, people would kind of step back and go, wait a minute, this is not such a free ride anymore.
Yeah.
So we need to identify what we're talking about when we're talking about that broad topic of subsidy.
But we're not. That's not part of our charge, Bruce.
Well, you just asked
No, I did
to
not.
look into subsidy.
No,
That's how I understood it too.
Me too.
Okay, we're discussing relocating vents, new homes and existing homes. If I have to preface my comments, we're gonna be here a long time. I believe that it should be clear that I'm talking about, I said, existing construction, question mark, cost subsidies. I'm not gonna debate whether a grant is a subsidy or
Okay.
not. I think it's pretty
So
clear.
when you use the word subsidies, it was a very fine point.
It's a
on
concept,
Only relating to vent pipes.
it's a conceptual, I'm using it as a term with respect to conceptualizing a solution for a problem that was brought up at the meeting, which is an existing construction. There's a big cost in relocating the vent pipe. It is also a problem for the HDC because it creates a focal point if there's a vent pipe.
Right.
So one of the potential solutions that I'm suggesting is to determine conceptually who are the powers that be in these matters to determine whether there might be, and if so, what are the conditions for some type of a subsidy? I use the term subsidy loosely, only with respect to existing vent pipes.
Well, I can say that the federal tax credit accommodates it already, so any installation that requires other work to get it accomplished can be written off in the tax credit. That already exists, but I don't think that it's the purview of this group to determine what the opportunity is. That made, as someone that works daily trying to navigate programs and subsidies as they exist, it's a fool's mission.
Which is why I'm trying to keep it simple with,
Yeah.
I was gonna say the town, if I believe I said the town and the community want sustainable energy, then we as a community locally might talk about at some point in the future how we're gonna facilitate that, with shared responsibility. So I'm not suggesting we run out and we, you know,
Make a list.
yeah, I'm not suggesting we run out and, you know, go to the town crier and say, we want a subsidy for moving vent pipes. I'm just saying, this is something that if someone could kind of track down some thoughts on it, so that the group, you know, or we can just do it here in group.
Yeah, I think that I was simply acknowledging that an existing building like my own has some challenges to meet a criteria, specifically optimizing vent pipe penetrations. I'm eager to do it because I don't want it to look that way on my house either. And as shared responsibility, I feel an obligation to accommodate and work with the HDC so that it doesn't look foolish
In that
with a
regard,
missing panel.
in that regard, for an existing roof plane that has 1, 2, or 3 white or black pipes penetrating. How difficult, and this is, I'm talking about a southern facing one, that is important to the solar. How difficult it is for a solar designer to design around those pipes rather than to say, give me a clean slate.
I think it's not hard to design around them. I think there's millions of installations in the country where that is exactly the case.
Exactly.
So it's not a problem at all, but to accomplish what the HDC is trying to affect, they do need to have a clean roof line. And I think that that's not unreasonable.
I think you can look around you for a good example of why. Look at the pattern on the wall. If this were just a gray right across and even from a certain point at the bottom all the way to the ceiling, your eye doesn't, it's not drawn to it. I can sit here and my eye is drawn around this room looking at the zigzag pattern. The solar installer can design a system that is, you know, depending on the size of the panel, you know, 6 inches on one side and 6 inches on the other away from the pipe. The problem is that after those 6 inches, it's gonna be, the vertical element is gonna be as tall as the height of the panels. Because otherwise he's gonna have a zigzag pattern and then that's gonna show up around the edges. That's what the HDC is trying to cure in some installations.
What about the idea of a dummy panel that you drill a hole around?
Well, so I looked into that, and the problem is that unless it's manufactured without the electrical components, it's actually generating electricity, and it becomes a fire hazard. I thought that that was a great idea before.
I did too, and that actually applies to a lot of the items that are in here.
Yeah, so, and this is just anecdotal, this is, you know, I've read this on some solar installer forums and things, but. You know, that might be another way to look, that might be another comment, is. False panels. You know, what's the benefit, what are the pros and cons?
Maybe we should get into manufacturing this.
Are you volunteering to spearhead that effort?
No. I have no time.
So I'll circle that as an item. The idea of the optimizing vent pipe penetrations, I don't want to just have had, you know, a lot of discussion on that, and then we just leave it to pick up and have a lot more discussion. Can someone help me give that some direction? Do you guys have thoughts on how we want to leave that with some action items that will help to bring a more concrete next step? For existing, new is fine, we understand what's involved.
Okay. One thought that comes to mind is kind of an assessment of the cost associated with moving that. Now, it kind of opens up kind of the broader dialogue about shared responsibility, shared cost. We're already talking about the installation that's somewhere between $20,000 and $40,000 and more. So what is the delta? What's the change in cost to move the vent pipe? Now, that doesn't necessarily shift the focus of the HDC to say, well, that's going to cost you $7,500, so we'll make an exception in that case.
Can't do it.
Right. So I just want to make that clear. We could make some accommodation for the financial burden that applicant stands to, pay. But that doesn't necessarily change the dynamic of the HTC's perspective, so. And again, this idea also will filter through a lot of these ideas, through a lot of these items. The cost of that movement, I don't know, if we can require that, I don't think the HTC can require that.
Sure, and I'm not suggesting they do, I'm not suggesting the HCC make an accommodation for the cost. Let me just to be clear, simply responding to a valid point that was brought up, that is an obstacle for a homeowner in the existing condition. And if there's some way that the community can share the responsibility, if there isn't an easily, readily accessible solar source of funding, where the community somehow gets involved. I'm not saying a grant, I'm not saying a gimme, I'm saying, does the community get involved with a fund? And they, they have this, it's not our work group's job to establish the criteria, but I think we have a responsibility as we're identifying these things so we're not siloed, to identify, okay, this is a problem waiting for a solution. And you all in the community, whether it falls to some organization within the municipality or it falls to a group of citizens, like this is a real issue we've identified. We've looked into what I was thinking conceptually, who would be involved in helping solve it locally. And our recommendation is that for existing structures, this be pursued with I'm just saying, as an example, with the intended resolution that there is some type of funding that is, paid back over time for people to be able to relocate this vent and put solar up on the south panel where otherwise the HDC would deny it.
Eliminate it altogether or deny it altogether.
Yeah, that's why,
right.
so
Right.
that I mean, for the HDC, I
Right.
think the HDC's contribution would be, well, what is that threshold under which the HDC would say no? But if they said yes, it was because it was it met the guidelines for a full roof coverage. Or nearly full.
Right.
Is that,
Perfect.
okay, so.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the outcome. So hopefully collectively we can consider that, I'll make notes and then we can kind of consider that when we're writing up the recommendation, where we were going with it. This is a segue, that was a segue to elimination of the sawtooth effect. Here's a great example of the sawtooth effect we're looking at on this. I'd love to hear thoughts on this. I think it has to do with these false panels.
Well, what causes the sawtooth effect? Dormers,
Mhm.
anything that interrupts,
Valleys,
yeah,
Mhm.
you have that stepped effect in any valley, anytime there's a valley.
And then one of the things we talked about is like for new construction. Roof designs. An architect or designer could be looking at, well, is this really the most appropriate place for this dormer? Or this gable to tie in to a roof plane that is prime solar territory. Is there some other way that when I'm designing a home, I can be, this is a longer term kind of cultural change in designers and the architects, but it goes to the shared responsibility again. Is there some way I can be designing this home so that that isn't an architectural feature that creates the sawtooth effect?
In your experience, Bruce, have you ever seen any sacrificial panels that have been utilized for an aesthetic effect?
Not necessarily for aesthetic, but for practical purpose.
Enhanced production.
Well, that, not so much enhanced production, but to allow the installations to be more uniformly placed for an aesthetic. In many locations, when you put up these solar farms, as they call them, you're not concerned with the aesthetic. They're mounted on structures that are 6-7 feet above the ground, so you can maintain the grass on. And you may have a false panel here or there, or you may skip them. So it actually depends on the circumstances of the installation and the sophistication of the community that's going in. A lot of communities are waking up to what is often described as the false premise of meeting green goals. When the beneficiaries are not the community, but it's, for example, a homeowner who's putting up as many solar panels they can in order to generate the maximum amount of credits, when that home doesn't need that much.
Is the false panel, is that a product that's produced by that same panel manufacturer?
I don't know.
Okay, well, it's something worth looking into to
And I
discover
think
if that's a
an
real thing.
easy thing to,
We just made that up.
that's an easy thing to research.
Okay.
But you get the idea.
Because if they are false and if they don't generate electricity and they can be cut, they can be used to travel up valleys or to
Yeah.
follow the roof line of a hip.
Yeah,
And so that would speak to, again, a number of items on that list. I don't know if this exists, so it's worthwhile to
It's
pursue.
solar fabric, so do they have solar malleable roof? I don't know.
Well, you're not cutting solar panels in the field, even if they're false,
Right,
because they still contain toxic elements.
absolutely, right.
So, what we're typically told at HDC is that that can't be done.
Okay.
But, the Tesla rep, I believe, suggested that it could be done. And it's being done on a house in Mattakit, where we approved it on the solar roof tiles on the backside of a house
Right.
and the cottage. And the condition was that it went from edge to edge, both at the ridge to the soffit, the eave fascia, and to the gable eaves.
And the installer said that he thought he could do that.
I don't know. I mean, that's what we approved.
No, I know.
Is it being, in that
I
case,
heard
is it a
it's
square
not
roof
happening.
or is it angled?
You heard that it's not
It doesn't
happening.
matter.
It's just a rectangular form, but he's going edge to edge.
Right, so you'll have to.
But
cut
he
that
will have to
end
cut some,
panel.
yeah,
Right,
yeah.
And that was what the fellow said, he's not sure if he can cut them and maintain warranties and whatnot, it's complicated.
right,
Because they plug in.
Right.
That type of system is all, it's all plug and play literally in order to fit into the system. It's probably the mounting hardware includes the electrical connectivity components. So I think, to me, we need a volunteer who will look into, who's gonna look into that.
The false panels?
Yeah, like somebody who can talk to industry insiders as opposed to local installers and, spend, probably a couple of hours on the phone and online sourcing information and then pursuing it so we can, this is my thought on this. I do not want to be, on behalf of the group, on behalf of the organizational works committee, on behalf of the HDC, espousing ideas, final recommendations without authoritative vetted information.
100%.
So I just wanted to give you the reason why I think it's important. So again, this is going to be this is a work group. It's going to consist of many volunteer options. And I'd like to see if someone will volunteer for that. So that one's on hold, pending volunteer. I don't think we're gonna have enough work group members for our volunteer tasks. I mean, I'm not being flippant, I don't see it happening. Let's see. Is there any other comments anybody you think you want to put in on that one?
So to that effect, to that end, if a panel can't be cut to assist in eliminating the sawtooth effect, does that eliminate that building or that roof line for being considered for a solar array?
Currently, yes, depending on its location. So it's on the back of a home. Typically, no.
Typically, no, it's not being eliminated.
Typically, it's not
Denied.
eliminated. Depending on the visibility.
Okay.
If it's highly visible off of, a back street. Let's say the,
It's okay, you can leave it with visibility, I
Yeah.
understand, I get it.
so if that, and then that instance, it's determined to be a distraction and it's not. And I agree, it's,
This is just rooftop, you're not talking about ground rate.
yeah, just rooftop stuff. I mean, primarily, we're trying to hit the rooftops because that's where the problems are for the HDC. So, it depends on the visibility.
Okay.
But it does eliminate, we've got one in front of the HDC we heard last night, or, Tuesday night, that has that socket effect. Right, listen to the one on, I thought the one on Burnell does.
Yeah,
So,
And so.
it is visible, and
It's approved.
yeah, no,
No.
we're held it for review and for additional information and. For another commissioner to come on board who's taking this away, but. Like, that's like that's a very real problem that if we found. A particular vendor who does regional distribution. Has a product that they would allow. I mean, look, I just want to say, no one's volunteered for this, but for the group, someone may say, a company may say, well, yeah, you'll lose the warranty. But at press, they'll say, well, it's not connected to the system, so you're not gonna lose the warranty on that. It's like you bought an extra bumper for your car, just because you cut it up doesn't mean your truck, doesn't mean that you lose your warranty. I mean, I don't know why you would, but maybe you want to do a modification to it. People do that all the time. So I think that if it's a panel that's not connected to the system, the idea that it voids a warranty to me doesn't necessarily hold water so much as, is there a life safety issue? So if somebody wakes up tomorrow and says, boy, I cannot wait to investigate this, just please keep that in mind. But that is probably one of the more important ones, much more important even for existing and new construction than the optimizing the vent pipe location.
I'm gonna give a soft yes on pursuing this
I
concept
knew I could get you.
without a clearly defined calendar date.
Okay. That one is more important to me than a glossary, and that's part of this process, is like, somebody might volunteer for something, but it doesn't mean you gotta do it tomorrow. But so I would suggest that maybe
do you
number,
want me to do the glossary? Can you do
I
that one?
can, if you take the lead, I can give you any feedback that you need and help you build out the process.
Yeah, in your spare time. I think it would be-
I know.
or I
I'd
don't,
probably be better at that though than understanding the technical aspect of it.
I'd be happy if you wanted to lead the glossary, but I
Okay.
will help you because I've already got a decent list.
so I'm gonna cross out Andy's baby, and I'm gonna put that down as Dale and Andy's slow roll. And can we make, as we go, number one, number two, number one, number two? As a priority?
In which
Sure.
column, under status? What are you suggesting?
No, I'm just thinking, I'm not necessarily suggesting, let me rephrase that. Does anyone disagree that, the elimination, well, first of all, that the elimination of the sawtooth effect is more important than coming up with a glossary immediately?
Yeah, but it's a different person doing it, so.
Well, I know, but we also want to try and code these out for prioritization, so like, if
Yeah.
we have a half an hour to discuss something at a meeting, we can, just more easily manage it. Okay, so that's, we'll call high priority. The definitions of glossary are relatively low priority. Optimizing the vent pipe penetrations is a medium priority.
I kind of have that lumped in with the sawtooth.
Yeah,
Okay,
but you have the whole architectural integration as like one chunk, and then all of those are the same.
I was thinking that, but
Priority,
I'm
yeah.
looking at C, and it looks like that C and D are gonna be a lot more lifting. So I'm wondering if we kind of
Yeah.
individually prioritize the two, A, B, C, and D. Not that we break them up from the group, but we just, we can individually prioritize those.
And we've got E and F also.
Yeah, I just didn't flip the page.
I'm gonna add a comment to the optimization of the vent pipe penetrations.
Yeah.
If there is a solution that has a panel that can be, can have a hole drilled through it. Then we've got a full set of panels with a white PVC pipe sticking out of it. So one thing that we've done to,
Paint them
I
black.
guess, dress them would be either to paint it black or to put a copper sleeve around it.
We have done that.
So I think that that's a good important consideration
Yeah.
and something that we should include in our language for HDC painted black or add a copper sleeve
I
or
think-
whatever those solutions are.
I think
That's
you
our
may have
responsibility.
just killed two birds with one
One
stone.
stone. That's why I kind of had them lumped together.
Yeah, so I'm not suggesting we don't lump them together in terms of how they're presented on the page. In terms of discussion items, I'm just saying with respect to the priority managing the task. This group. A and B, for instance, may be a higher priority than pursuing Tesla and gas solar shingle information. So that's all I'm saying there. With respect to Andy's comment, yeah, I agree. I mean, if elimination of the sawtooth effect. Well, part of that is whether panels can be cut. So I think we need to create a sub to that, which is elimination of the sawtooth is roofs, dormers, valleys. For new construction, as we talked about, it's architectural prioritization of architectural elements. Also, it could be sacrificial panels. And then that overlaps with maybe eliminating the need to optimize vent pipe penetrations on existing construction. Okay. Other thoughts on either of those? We're gonna be revisiting these over time, so like, it's not like we're closing them all up, I mean, just have said. So,
Is this form, for example, we just banty back and forth comments and suggestions or whatnot. Is someone going to expand the comments section to include these? Okay. thank
yeah,
you.
that's gonna be, unfortunately, my job. At least to start. We'll see who steps up. One of the recommendations the HDC may have is that we have somebody who comes in and helps us. It's like,
Yeah, to that point, I mean, okay, so we just had our first successful discussion about one of the items that's been on Stephen's list. Thank you for making the list.
it's really our list.
It's a team list, I appreciate that. But the next question is, what does the transition look like where we take 2A and help you to create a submission for the HDC, right? It's a single page, it has all the comments and the recommendation to show that we've actually vetted our concept.
I think that comes at a great question. We talked about at the last week that there'll be like a narrative of what the item is, what the description is, maybe some example pictures of good, bad, and ugly, for lack of a better term, and the recommendation. I think that the timeline for that is going to depend on our actions as a group, how quickly we locate information. If you jump on this tomorrow and you find 3 manufacturers who say, look, sacrificial panels, they can be cut, they can be drilled, they don't provide, they're not a life safety issue as long as they're not connected to the system, and they can be safely mounted so they're not projectiles in a hurricane or hurricane-like winds. We could advance that to that worksheet. We could fill in the information here and advance it to its individual worksheet based on the information we've added and any additional discussion, and they could go to the HDC for recommendation at that point.
I'm asking for exactly that reason, because that will help to guide the workflow so that if people are doing research specific to an item, we can actually conceptualize and have that format in mind. So if I need to come up with 3 pictures from a manufacturer versus 2 versus 17, and different angles, different perspectives, or an example of its application in real life. If I know that up front, I don't have to revisit the idea, right?
Sure.
So if I need to show it on a roof line, that's a great example. I need to show it on a roof line to show that it's a valid concept. I need to know that now. So I'm not going back and doing double work.
No,
So we don't have to
Great point.
decide now. I just want to start to think about it as a group so that we know what that format looks like. And so we can make progress and pass to you and make your job easier too. So you're not rewriting.
No, that's fine. I think, what we'll end up doing is a template of that. I did a drawing template of it the other day, a quick
Okay.
sketch.
Oh, yeah, last week.
Yeah, we can, I think what I'd like to do, as opposed to creating more work for ourselves, in terms of creating a template, is that we segue into discussion right now about what is typically appropriate or required to bring it to the HDC. So we all have that common knowledge. And then we will refine it when we do the first one. You would be prepared, for instance, if we all agreed that find as many examples as you reasonably can of good, bad, and ugly. Whether it's manufacturer's information or a real world application. And then you'll have that resource if we, for instance, bring it to the HDC and they wanted more information. I wouldn't say spend hours on it, but if you spend an extra half an hour trying to document the visuals versus 10 minutes, just as a,
Yeah,
you'll have it in a file folder somewhere on your
no, I
computer.
appreciate it.
And I think that would be helpful. And then you also have, you'll be able to bring them into the group. We'll be able to help pick out relevant examples for HDC processing as HDC members.
It needs to go here,
Yes, and then eventually we'll get some illustrations that go in there.
right, so. I'm thinking down the pipeline.
Yeah, no, I got you.
And how, and where do we land? It is about workload, and it is about minimizing our own effort.
And part of, so, I mean, just to, so you guys get a chance,
It's 5.
is if you look at, okay, we'll wrap up soon. Is if you look at the last page, there's a kind of a rundown and just trying to get our arms around what's next. Once we get through the list, the first time through. Bruce, and not to stir the pot or anything, but this is why I'm just trying to stay focused as we, on the particular topics we've gotten through some really good discussion. But we're through 3 of probably, I don't know,
17, I think.
17 items, but probably 50 discussion points
Yeah.
that are each gonna spawn some others. So that's all I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to be a bear to anybody. I'm just, I recognize the gravity of the responsibility we have and the amount of time it's gonna take. And I'm trying to get us off on a strong foot, that's all.
Appreciate it. This is a great start.
Okay. So you have an idea if you decide to jump on anything in between now and next week of what we'd be looking for as examples.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to see, one of the things I haven't put on the agenda, but I will, is go to the order. We don't have time much for it now, but that's, a time to have brief, to the charter points about how we're doing, are we on course? And if not, we can have a discussion about it. And I just want to have that available to the membership. I think it's important.
I vote that we're almost on board right now.
I take it. Thank you so much, Mary. You still have an opportunity to bail.
Don't do it.
I'm hoping, last comment is, my idea is to set a tone and direction based on the charter and again, what I just said about the amount of work we have to do, and then just back off and let it be work. But I think it's important to get that foundation and the guardrails up first, because otherwise we're gonna founder. Any other thoughts anyone has at this time? Mary?
Yeah, I would just
Yeah,
need
please.
to say that the things that I'd be interested in working on are points 10 and 11, or I can break them off and those help.
Okay,
So unless, if anybody else is interested in that kind of stuff,
okay,
but just jumping ahead to what I.
Yeah,
think
that's
I
a
think I
perfect
can do.
category
Yeah,
for you.
yeah,
We also may get, if we make this public, when we make this public, we may get invested parties outside this group that may do that research in conjunction with us. So I
Right,
think
and-
we can encourage that for the sake of progress and for the sake of, cooperation.
I agree, and that's actually one of the things we're gonna explore in that paragraph I referred you to, is like, how do we get this done? So some of these, bringing up with action items to do soon, because they're things they're items that if we can identify the information to make a recommendation, they can move the needle at the HDC. A lot of these, we're not gonna be able to do that with, and that's what I was alluding to when I said there's more opportunities for volunteering than there are gonna be resources in our work to do it. Part of our next step, once we get through this first list, is what do we do with it next? In terms of getting other people involved, in terms of getting resources involved. So with that, I would suggest, please, I know it's dry, but just please read through this and take you maybe 15 minutes, a half an hour. make notes and be ready to comment next week. We'll take material comments, out of the gate. And, then we'll go right back into the list next week.
Great. How quickly will we have the updated version of this so that we can share it with members or the public that may not be here today?
So
I know you're busy. I'm not putting pressure
And do
on.
we send our things to Ez to hand out? Or are we, how did we decide we were doing that?
So I think what I would suggest in reverse order, Val, yours is, bring what you have on a digital format so it can be put up. We can discuss it on the big screen. When you
Like
get
on a
to it.
stick?
Yeah, sure.
You're talking about your glossary?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. I don't have a, portable computer
Oh, okay.
that,
Well, so you put it on a stick.
okay.
Yeah, put it on a stick.
Cool.
And then the other item is Andy's question.
Not gonna be-
Bruce, hold up, please. The other idea is, when does this get updated and then get distributed? So I'll update it as soon as I possibly can, and get it out to you through Esme. And, in terms of distribution, I'm gonna ask again, please, a courtesy to the group, don't distribute it. It's not that it's some big hidden record. We've talked about it publicly. If someone wants to request it, they can put a request into the town. But until just think it's fair to the work group, until we've got a membership and we go through the list. I think it's fair not to make it a publicly, we post it somewhere to be publicly distributed. So again, I'd ask you guys to honor that. Okay.
So just bring it to the group.
Yeah, bring it to the group
Okay.
and keep the version you get of the worksheet to yourself. And if someone wants to see it, you're welcome to put a request into the town and we won't hold it up. But I don't think it's certainly not a document that's nothing to hide. It's just not ready to be posted on a website.
Sure.
That's all.
They won't know about it.
Well, they'll know about it when we start telling people about
Well,
it.
I understand, but right now, no one's gonna make a request because they don't know.
Well, they're gonna watch the YouTube.
Yeah,
Right. And then they say, oh, I want that.
yeah, and I want to get it out there because there's probably a ton more good ideas in the public.
Yeah, well, that's my concern and part of my mission. The first thing that I'm gonna do is call the 6 or 7 solar installers that I know, not just on Nantucket, but in New England, and say, is there a sacrificial panel?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna Google it. I'm gonna
Well,
call
yeah,
people that
I mean,
know.
I figured you're
No,
gonna have
I'm just
industry.
letting you know.
resources. Yeah, no, and that, but to be clear, an action item that we agree is, to go out and do is like, none of this is like, we're trying to hide it.
Yeah, no,
And certainly if you get an action item and you want to contact resources, there's not like a non-disclosure agreement they've got to sign or
Right.
something. Just please use whatever resources you have. I think we're
Wouldn't
to have
a
it.
designer, not necessarily an installer,
Mhm.
but wouldn't a designer, like, a friend that comes to the meetings, wouldn't he know about a product that might be a false
probably
panel?
not.
Okay,
Probably not.
Yeah, I mean,
but maybe a designer would know all that.
They should, but what, you're talking about a solar designer or? a house
Yes,
designer?
of course.
Well, they're usually one and the same. They come together.
So, Andy, that sounds like a good idea. I appreciate you broadening than that. Does anyone, Val, would you like to make John move off the motion to adjourn? Or no?
Motion to adjourn.
On your motion?
Aye.
Aye, okay.